Games, certainly, are one of the oldest forms of entertainment, from playing cards, checkers, chess, to today's famous video games. Games have evolved tremendously over the years, transforming into immersive experiences with realistic graphics and complex stories that rival action movies. But it hasn't always been this way. Today, let's explore together all the generations and evolutions of video games. Hello everyone, welcome to the channel. It's very true that in the beginning, video games were simple, with rudimentary graphics, limited audio, and basic gameplay. It was difficult to understand what was happening on the screen, with pixelated characters and often clumsy controls. Origins of video games. The history of video games dates back to the 1950s, when the first digital games were created, such as Birdie the Brain, in 1950, a tic-tac-toe game played on a giant computer created by Canadian engineer Joseph Cates. Later, in 1958, the famous Tennis for Two emerged, played on an oscilloscope, marking an era of experimentation with electronic games on machines that occupied huge spaces and were only accessible in institutional settings. First generation, the rise of home consoles. The real revolution came with the first generation of home consoles around 1972, with the release of the Magnavox Odyssey, allowing players to experience games on their own televisions. This rudimentary console used cards to change colors on the screen, as it had no colorful graphics or sound. Other important consoles of this generation include the Coleco Telstar and the Atari Pong, which brought the first arcade games into homes. Second generation, the era of cartridges. The 1980s marked the beginning of the second generation with the advent of programmable cartridges. The Atari 2600 stood out as the market leader, popularizing games like Pac-Man and Space Invaders. Competition grew with the release of the Intellivision and ColecoVision, introducing better graphics and more advanced controls. However, market saturation and the poor quality of some games led to the famous crash of 1983, an event that nearly destroyed the video game industry in the United States. Third generation, the rise of 8-bits. The third generation, starting with the Nintendo Entertainment System, NES, in 1985 in Japan, known as Famicom, marked the industry's revival after the crash. The NES brought games like Super Mario Bros. And The Legend of Zelda, establishing gameplay standards that still influence modern games. Sega also entered the scene with the Master System, while Atari tried to stay relevant with the Atari 7800. It was an era of significant advances in graphics and audio, with 8-bit games becoming extremely popular. Fourth generation, the 16-bit console wars. The 1990s were marked by the fourth generation, dominated by 16-bit consoles. The Sega Genesis, Mega Drive, competed directly with Nintendo's Super Nintendo Entertainment System, SNES, in a battle known as the Console War. While the Genesis excelled with games like Sonic the Hedgehog, the SNES offered Super Mario World and The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past, taking games to new levels of complexity and immersion. It was also during this time that the first CD-based games began to appear, with the Sega CD and TurboGrafx CD introducing new storage possibilities and audio quality. Fifth generation, the 32 of 64-bit revolution. The fifth generation brought consoles like the Sony PlayStation, Sega Saturn, and Nintendo 64, marking the transition to 3D graphics and greater storage capacity. The PlayStation, with its vast game catalog and CD playback capability, dominated the market, while the Nintendo 64 stood out for technical innovation, such as the analog joystick controller and the introduction of the Rumble Pack vibration system. It was an era of significant technological advancements, with games like Final Fantasy VII and Super Mario 64 setting new standards for quality and narrative.
It's me, Mario! Hello!
Sixth generation, the era of DVD and online gaming. The turn of the millennium saw the emergence of the sixth generation, with consoles like the PlayStation 2, Xbox, and Nintendo GameCube. These consoles used DVDs as their main media, allowing for even more detailed graphics and complex gameplay. Microsoft's Xbox introduced the concept of online gaming with Xbox Live, offering a new dimension of interactivity and community for gamers. Meanwhile, Nintendo's GameCube focused on exclusive games like Super Smash Bros. Melee and The Legend of Zelda: The Wind Waker, solidifying its position in the market. Seventh generation, the multimedia gaming era. The seventh generation began with the release of the Xbox 360, PlayStation 3, and Nintendo Wii. These consoles continued the evolution of 3D graphics and introduced new forms of interaction, such as Microsoft's Kinect and Nintendo's Wii Remote, allowing players to control games with body gestures. The PlayStation 3 introduced Blu-ray as the standard format, significantly increasing storage capacity. It was also during this generation that games became true multimedia experiences, combining high-definition graphics, surround sound, and robust online gameplay. Eighth generation, convergence and virtual reality. The eighth generation began with the Nintendo Wii U, followed by Sony's PlayStation 4 and Microsoft's Xbox One. These consoles continued the trend of advanced graphics and online gameplay, but also saw the emergence of new technologies like virtual reality, VR, and augmented reality, AR. The PlayStation 4 Pro and Xbox One X offered significant improvements in performance and graphics, while the Nintendo Switch introduced the concept of a hybrid console, usable both as a home console and as a portable device. As we move into the future, new technologies such as virtual reality and augmented reality promise to further revolutionize the gaming experience. The next generation of consoles, such as the PlayStation 5 and Xbox Series X, are raising standards with 4K graphics, higher frame rates, and reduced loading times. The integration of artificial intelligence, cross-platform gameplay, and streaming services is transforming how we play and interact with video games. The history of video games is an incredible journey of innovation and creativity, from the earliest simple games to today's complex virtual worlds. Over the years, video games have not only become a form of entertainment but also a platform for storytelling, exploring new worlds, and connecting people around the globe. As we eagerly await the future of gaming, it's fascinating to reflect on how this industry continues to evolve and surprise. That was today's video, folks. If you enjoyed it, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Thank you very much and see you next time.